It's 2:13 a.m. Your phone screen lights up with a number, $4,870. Your thumb hovers over the payment button, but you don't press it. Your chest feels tight. Nothing has been taken from you tonight. No one has knocked on your door. No one has appeared in your room. The refrigerator is full. The lights still work. And yet, some ancient part of your body is behaving as if something is about to be lost. That feeling, that specific unfinished pressure inside your ribcage, is older than the dollar, older than the bank, older than the credit card in your wallet by at least 5,000 years. So why does a number that has taken nothing from you tonight still make your body feel hunted? Let's rewind further than you think. Because to understand the balance glowing on your screen at 2 a.m., you have to understand something strange about our species. Long before humans could write, before we built cities, before we minted a single coin, we had already invented a feeling that some future version of ourselves had already been claimed. And once you understand where that feeling came from, you'll never look at a debt the same way again. Picture this. A small settlement somewhere in the fertile plains between two rivers, roughly 7,000 years ago. A woman kneels beside a woven basket. She can see the bottom of it. She can see the weave. That is not supposed to happen this early in the season. Outside, the barley in the field is still green, weeks away from ripening. Her children are still hungry today. She walks to a neighbor's house. The neighbor's jar is fuller. Grain passes between hands. She feels relief. And then, in the same breath, something else, something heavier, because the grain in her hand now has a future attached to it. She has not lost anything yet. She has just gained something. And still, part of tomorrow already feels occupied. That is the moment. Not the invention of money, not the invention of coins, the invention of a promise that outlives the meal. For most of human history, when anthropologists look at how people actually shared resources, they find something that surprises them every time. It doesn't look like banking. It doesn't even look like trading. Among the Hadza in Tanzania, when a hunter brings back a large animal, he doesn't necessarily eat more of it than anyone else. The meat spreads through the camp in ways that can't be reduced to a simple ledger of who owes whom. Among the Agta in the Philippines, experiments have shown that when someone needs food, the strongest predictor of who gives it to them isn't past generosity, it's present need. The Ache in Paraguay, the Juhoansi in the Kalahari, Inuit communities in the Arctic, the pattern keeps repeating. Human sharing is not primitive banking. It's something older, messier, and in some ways more sophisticated. It's obligation without arithmetic, reciprocity without receipts. And here's the part that should stop you. Your brain still runs this program. Think about the last time a friend paid for dinner. Nothing was signed. No number was recorded. And yet, somewhere in your mind, a quiet mark appeared. Next time, she got me, my turn. That mark isn't a modern financial habit. It's the ghost of a system that kept our ancestors alive when the hunt failed. It's the reason you feel a small, involuntary discomfort when someone helps you and you can't help them back. Anthropologists have a word for this, reciprocity, but the feeling has no name. It just runs underneath everything, all the time, in every relationship you have. For most of our species' existence, that was enough. Small groups, familiar faces, everybody remembered. Reputation was the ledger. Gossip was the enforcement. If someone kept taking without giving, the camp knew, and they had 1,000 quiet ways to correct it. Then, roughly 5,000 years ago, in a place called Uruk, something broke. Human beings did something no other animal had ever done. They took memory, the fragile, forgettable, biased thing living inside their skulls, and they pressed it into clay. The Metropolitan Museum of Art holds tablets from this period. Some are small enough to fit inside a palm. On their surface, in the earliest form of writing we can currently read, are records. Not stories, not poems, not myths of the gods, rations, barley, livestock, who received what, who owed what. Some of the oldest surviving writing on Earth is essentially accounting. Think about that for a moment. Before we wrote love poems, we wrote invoices. Before we wrote the names of our kings, we wrote the names of our debtors. Writing didn't begin as art. It began as memory that refused to die. And once a promise could survive on a piece of clay, something fundamental about human life changed. A debt no longer needed a village to remember it. A debt no longer needed the debtor to be alive. The tablet remembered. The tablet outlived. The tablet did not forget. Imagine standing in a small mud-walled room in ancient Mesopotamia. The air smells of grain dust and lamp oil. A scribe presses a reed into wet clay. Your name is being pressed in with it. You watch the stylus move, and you understand, not fully, but enough, that a version of you now exists outside your body. A version made of clay. A version that will speak against you if you fail. A version that will speak for you if the lender tries to lie. That duality is important. The record binds both sides. By the 2nd millennium BCE, in a merchant city called Kultepe, an entire economy is running on this technology. In one tablet, 2 men borrow around 3 kilograms of silver from a creditor named Ashur-edi. 1/3 is due at the next harvest. The rest comes later. Interest accrues if payment is late. Witnesses seal the case. The transaction is essentially a modern loan agreement: principal, schedule, interest, witnesses, enforcement, and it is happening more than 1,000 years before the first coin is ever minted. This is the part that stops most people cold. We were told a story. First humans bartered, then they invented money, then they invented loans. It's clean, it's logical, and it's wrong. Debt came before coins, by more than 1,000 years, which means the object we associate with money, the shiny disk of metal, was never the point. The point was the number, the agreement. The promise that could outlive the harvest, the weather, the memory of everyone who witnessed it. And this is where the trap opens, because agriculture created a problem that our hunter-gatherer ancestors never had to solve. Hunger arrives every day, but a field of barley only pays out once a year. Between the planting and the harvest, there is a gap where children still need to eat, a gap where seed grain becomes more valuable than food because eating it now destroys next year entirely. A gap where a family can be asset-rich and starving in the same afternoon. Debt fills that gap. It moves food from a future that exists only in imagination into a present where mouths are already open. In this sense, borrowing was never invented because people wanted things they couldn't afford. It was invented because bodies could not wait for harvests. When I first sat with this idea, I had to sit with it for a long time, because it flips the entire moral vocabulary of modern debt on its side. The oldest loans in human history were not signs of weakness or excess. They were survival technology. They were how a household kept its seed grain in the ground when its stomach demanded that it come out. But every survival technology carries a shadow. Because the tablet doesn't know about drought, the clay doesn't feel the wind that stripped the crop, the number does not care that the rain never came. There is a line in the Code of Hammurabi, Law 48, that almost no one has ever heard of, and it should probably be more famous than most of what that code contains. It says, roughly, that if a storm floods a debtor's field, or if the harvest fails from lack of water, that year's grain is not owed, and no interest may be charged. Read that again. Nearly 4,000 years ago, someone in ancient Babylon understood something we are still arguing about in courtrooms and parliaments and comment sections in 2026. That a promise made under one sky cannot always be enforced under another. That the number written in clay cannot always survive contact with the world. And yet, even with that law on the books, debt in the ancient world sometimes did what it still does today. It hardened, it compounded. Households pledged members of their own family as security. A single bad harvest could be absorbed, a second one could not. And what began as a survival tool could become a slow, quiet form of ownership over other human beings. This is why, again and again across Mesopotamian history, rulers stepped in and simply canceled certain kinds of debt. Not commercial loans between merchants. Distressed debts, household debts, the kind that could destabilize an entire population if left to compound forever. Ancient kings understood, thousands of years before economists coined the phrase, that a society can be strangled by its own promises. Somewhere inside you, this is still running. Because in the last few years, this exact tension has come screaming back into public life. The student loan pause, the debate over medical debt forgiveness, buy now, pay later apps quietly turning a coffee into a 4-part obligation, algorithms deciding your creditworthiness from data you didn't know you were generating. The average American now carries more unsecured debt than at almost any point in modern history, and researchers keep finding the same thing. Problematic debt correlates strongly with anxiety, depression, and a diminished sense of control over one's own life. We think this is a modern problem. Late-stage capitalism, predatory lending, 21st century finance. And some of it is, but the psychology underneath, the tight chest at 2 a.m., the number that feels like a hand around your throat, that psychology is not new. Modern finance is a delivery system. The feeling it delivers is ancient. Because here is what your brain is actually doing when it stares at that balance on the screen. It is not calculating dollars. It doesn't really know what dollars are. What it is doing is running a 5,000-year-old subroutine that says, someone has a claim on your future. Someone is waiting to be repaid. Someone remembers. And that subroutine was written in a world where being unable to repay didn't just mean bad credit. It meant losing your standing, your household, sometimes your freedom. Your body doesn't know you live in a country with bankruptcy law. Your body thinks the tablet is real. This is why the word owe is one of the strangest words in any language. Because you use it about money, but you also use it about love. I owe you one. I owe her an apology. I can never repay what you did for me. These are not banking phrases that leaked into emotion. It's the other way around. The banking phrases are the newcomers. The emotional weight is the original. Long before humans owed numbers, they owed each other. And when the numbers arrived, the tablets, the seals, the ledgers, the databases, they didn't create the feeling, they plugged into it. Modern finance is powerful precisely because it hooks into a psychology that was already there, waiting, evolved, running. Which brings us back to your phone. 2:13 a.m. The balance still glowing. Zoom out for a moment. What is that number actually claiming? Not the food in your refrigerator, not the shoes on the floor. It's claiming something that doesn't exist yet. Hours you haven't worked, a paycheck that hasn't been deposited, a version of you that hasn't lived yet. Every debt, in the end, is a contract between three people. The you of the past who made the promise, the you of the present who is holding the phone, and the you of the future, the one who is supposed to pay. The strangest part is that the future never actually signs. The future has never agreed to anything. The rain didn't sign. The economy didn't sign. Your health didn't sign. That is the oldest, quietest terror underneath every loan ever made. That the party expected to honor the promise is the one party that never had a chance to consent. Ancient people knew this. That's why they built cancellation into their systems. That's why Hammurabi wrote Law 48. That's why kings released distress debts. They understood that a civilization which lets its promises outweigh its realities eventually crushes itself. We are, right now, in 2026, still learning that lesson. Still relearning it every time a crisis hits, and millions of ordinary people find themselves holding tablets, digital ones this time, with numbers that no longer match the world. So the next time your phone lights up at 2 a.m. with a number that feels heavier than it should, remember what you are actually looking at. Not a modern financial problem, not a personal failure. You are looking at the oldest technology our species ever built for negotiating with a future it could not see. A memory with a deadline, a promise made by humans about a world that never agreed to cooperate. The clay changed. The screen changed. The interface changed. But that unfinished feeling, the one running through your chest right now, is the same feeling a woman in Mesopotamia carried home in a handful of borrowed grain 7,000 years ago. You've been carrying this longer than you realize. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Back Times, hit the bell icon, and share this video with someone who loves history.